The day my husband looked me in the eyes and told me I wasn't wife material, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't beg him to explain what he meant. I just stood there, frozen, as those 4 words shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. You want to know what happened next? You want to know how a woman who gave up her dreams, her career, and her identity for a man could rise from the ashes of that humiliation? Then stay with me, because this is about the sweetest revenge I never planned but absolutely delivered. Before we dive deep into this, I need you to do something for me right now. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Because trust me, you're going to want to follow this journey till the very end. My name is Emma. I'm 32 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was the perfect wife. At least I thought I was. I did everything right. I cooked his favorite meals. I kept our home spotless. I supported his career, his dreams, his ambitions. I smiled at his colleagues' parties even when I felt invisible. I nodded when his mother criticized everything from my cooking to my clothes. I became smaller and smaller, quieter and quieter, all because I believed that's what love required. For 7 years, I played this role. 7 years of bending, adapting, molding myself into whatever version of Emma he needed that day. And you know what I got in return? 4 words that destroyed me. You're not wife material. Let those words sink in for a moment. Not wife material. Me, the woman who had literally spent 7 years being nothing but a wife. When he said it, we were standing in our kitchen. The kitchen I'd designed, where I'd made thousands of meals, where I'd celebrated his promotions with champagne and comforted him after bad days with his favorite homemade lasagna. The evening light was coming through the window, hitting the marble countertop I'd spent weeks choosing. Everything looked so normal, so peaceful. And then he dropped that bomb. I remember looking down at my hands. They were wet from washing the dishes from the dinner I'd just made, his favorite, salmon with roasted vegetables. I remember thinking absurdly that I should dry my hands, that I shouldn't let water spots stain the countertop. That's trauma, isn't it? When your world is ending and your brain focuses on water spots. What did you just say? I finally managed to whisper. He didn't even have the decency to look uncomfortable. He just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, with this expression of annoyance. Like I was a problem he'd been meaning to address and finally found the time. You heard me, Emma. You're not wife material. You never really were. Never really were. As if our 7 years together had been some kind of extended trial period that I'd failed. But I am your wife, I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. We've been married for 7 years. Legally, yes, he said, and I swear, the casual cruelty in his tone was worse than the words themselves. But come on, Emma, be honest with yourself. You don't challenge me, you don't inspire me, you're just there going through the motions. My mom was right. I should have married someone more substantial. Substantial. Another word to add to my collection of soul-destroying vocabulary. I wanted to ask him what he meant. I wanted to list everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd done, every single way I'd twisted myself into knots for him. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the first flicker of anger starting to burn through the shock. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the universe telling me to shut up and listen because I was about to learn exactly who I'd married. I've been thinking about this for a while, he continued, and he had the audacity to sound reasonable. Thoughtful, even, like he was discussing a career change, not the destruction of our marriage. We're not right for each other, Emma. We never were, and I think I've found someone who is. There it was, the real truth. Hidden behind the criticism and the cruel words was another woman. I should have seen it coming. The late nights at work, the new cologne, the way he'd started going to the gym obsessively, the phone that was always face down, all the classic signs that every woman fears and hopes she's wrong about. But I'd ignored it all, because I was the perfect wife, remember, and perfect wives trust their husbands. Who is she? I asked, and my voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else's body. Does it matter? He had the nerve to look impatient. The point is, this isn't working. We both know it. I'm just the one brave enough to say it out loud. Brave. He called himself brave for cheating and then insulting me in my own kitchen. That was the moment something inside me shifted. It wasn't dramatic. There was no thunderclap or sudden realization. It was quieter than that. It was like a door closing softly, but locking firmly. The door to the version of Emma who cared what this man thought. The door to the woman who would fight for a marriage that was already dead. The door to my old life. "Okay," I said simply. He blinked, clearly surprised. I think he expected tears, begging, drama. "Okay, that's it." "What else do you want me to say, James?" I dried my hands on a dish towel, moving slowly, deliberately. "You've made up your mind. You've already found your replacement. You've decided I'm not good enough. What exactly am I supposed to fight for?" He actually looked disappointed, like my lack of reaction had spoiled his moment. "I thought you'd, I don't know, care more." "Oh, I care," I said, and I was surprised by how calm I sounded. "I care that I wasted 7 years on someone who could say something so cruel. I care that I gave up my career, my friends, my whole identity for a man who thinks I'm not substantial enough. I care very much, James, just not in the way you want me to." I walked past him, leaving the kitchen, leaving him standing there with his mouth slightly open. I walked upstairs to our bedroom, soon to be just his bedroom, and I sat on the edge of the bed, and I finally let myself feel it all. The humiliation, the anger, the grief, the rage, the betrayal. But underneath all of that, something else was growing, something I hadn't felt in 7 years. Clarity. He was right about one thing. I had been going through the motions. I had made myself small and quiet and forgettable. I had erased myself trying to be what he wanted. But here's what he didn't know. Here's what he couldn't have predicted in his arrogant, self-centered little mind. The woman he married, the vibrant, ambitious, fierce woman I used to be, she wasn't gone. She was just buried. And he had just given me the perfect reason to dig her back up. So I didn't cry that night. I didn't beg or plead or ask him to reconsider. Instead, I started planning. Not revenge, exactly. I didn't know what I was planning yet. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. If James wanted to watch me walk away, I was going to make sure it was a walk he'd never forget. That night, James didn't come to bed. I heard him downstairs, probably on the phone with her. The other woman. The one who was apparently wife material. The substantial one. I wondered what she looked like, what she did, what made her so special that my husband of 7 years could throw away our marriage without a second thought. But you know what? I didn't go downstairs to find out. I didn't snoop through his phone or demand answers. Instead, I lay there in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, and I started to remember things. Important things. Things I'd buried so deep I'd almost forgotten they existed. I remembered Emma at 23, fresh out of college with a degree in marketing and fire in my belly. I'd landed a junior position at one of the most competitive digital marketing agencies in the city. I was good at it too, better than good. Within a year, I'd been promoted. Within 2 years, I was managing my own accounts. I had ideas, ambition, a future that glittered with possibility. I remembered the Emma who stayed late at the office because she loved what she did, not because she had to. The Emma who pitched bold campaigns that made senior executives sit up and take notice. The Emma who wore power suits and red lipstick and walked into meetings like she owned the room. That Emma had dreams. She wanted to be a creative director by 30. She wanted to start her own agency eventually. She had a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a vision for her life that was bright and clear and entirely her own. And then I met James. He was charming, successful. He worked in finance, wore expensive suits, took me to nice restaurants. He made me feel special, chosen, like I was the most fascinating woman in the world. And maybe I was to him, back then. The change didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, so subtle I didn't notice until it was too late. First, it was just asking me to skip after-work drinks with my colleagues so we could have dinner together. Sweet, right? Wanting to spend time with me. Then it was suggesting I didn't need to work such long hours, that I should prioritize our relationship more. Reasonable, right? Relationships take effort. Then we got engaged and his mother got involved. Suddenly, there were opinions about everything. My job was too demanding for a future wife and mother. I should think about transitioning to something more flexible, something that wouldn't interfere with family life, something less consuming. I remember sitting at Sunday dinner at his parents' house, listening to his mother go on and on about how a woman needs to support her husband's career, not compete with it. How the most important job a woman can have is creating a beautiful home and being a partner her husband can rely on. And James just sat there, nodding along, agreeing with every word. I should have run then. I should have seen the red flags waving so violently they could have caused a windstorm. But I didn't, because I loved him, because I thought marriage was about compromise, because I'd been raised to believe that being chosen, being loved, being someone's wife was the ultimate achievement for a woman. So I started saying no to opportunities at work. I stopped pitching the big ideas. I left at 5 o'clock sharp instead of staying late to perfect my campaigns. I became reliable instead of remarkable, steady instead of spectacular. And you know what happened? My career stalled. The promotions stopped coming. The exciting projects went to hungrier, more available colleagues. My boss started giving me the safe accounts, the easy clients, the boring work. Within a year of getting engaged, I was practically invisible at my own company. When James and I got married, he suggested I quit altogether. We didn't need the money, he said. His job paid enough for both of us. Wouldn't I rather focus on our home, our life together? Maybe start thinking about kids. I hesitated. Some part of me knew that quitting was a point of no return, but he was so convincing. He painted this picture of a beautiful life where I wouldn't have to deal with office stress or demanding clients, where I could pursue hobbies, meet friends for lunch, be free. What he really meant was, be available, be waiting, be whatever I need whenever I need it. But I didn't understand that then, so I quit. I walked away from my career, my colleagues, my professional identity. I walked away from Emma, the marketing executive, and became Emma, the wife. And for 7 years, that's all I was. I threw myself into the role with the same intensity I'd once brought to my career. I took cooking classes. I learned about wine. I redecorated our house until it looked like something from a magazine. I went to the gym to stay attractive. I read books on how to be a better partner. I scheduled my entire life around James's needs and schedule. I thought I was building a marriage. I didn't realize I was erasing myself. Now, lying in the dark, listening to my husband murmur to another woman on the phone downstairs, I felt something crystallize inside me. It was anger, yes, but it was more than that. It was recognition. I recognized exactly what had happened to me, and more importantly, I recognized that I'd let it happen. James hadn't forced me to quit my job. He just made it clear that keeping it would disappoint him. He hadn't demanded I change. He'd just slowly, consistently shown me that the real Emma wasn't quite good enough, wasn't quite what he wanted, wasn't quite wife material. And I'd spent 7 years trying to prove him wrong by becoming exactly what he wanted. And now he was telling me it still wasn't enough, that I still wasn't enough, that some other woman was better, more substantial, more worthy. The irony was almost funny, almost. I finally fell asleep sometime after 2 in the morning, and when I woke up, James was already gone. There was a note on his pillow. Staying at the office for a few days. We'll talk about logistics later. Logistics. He meant divorce proceedings, splitting assets, dividing up our life like we were dissolving a business partnership. No apology, no explanation, just logistics. I picked up the note, read it again, and then I did something that surprised me. I laughed. Not a sad, bitter laugh, a real one. Because suddenly, with the morning light streaming through the windows and an empty bed beside me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. I got up, took a long shower, and instead of my usual routine, yoga pants and a comfortable sweater for a day of errands and housework, I dug into the back of my closet, way in the back. Behind all the soft, neutral, appropriate clothes I'd accumulated as Mrs. James Peterson, I found a box. A box I'd packed 7 years ago and never opened. Inside were my work clothes, my power suits, my statement jewelry, My red-soled heels that I'd saved up for months to buy when I got my first major promotion. My leather portfolio with my name embossed in gold. I pulled out a black blazer. It still fit perfectly. I paired it with slim black pants and a crisp white shirt. I found the heels. They needed polish, but they were still beautiful. I did my makeup the way I used to, bold brows, sharp eyeliner, red lips that meant business. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in 7 years, I recognized the woman staring back at me. "Hello, Emma," I said to my reflection. "I've missed you." Then I sat down at my laptop and started making calls. The first was to my old boss, Margaret Chen. I had no idea if she'd even remember me. It had been 7 years, after all. 7 years is a lifetime in the marketing world, but I had to try. The phone rang 3 times before she picked up. Margaret Chen. Her voice was exactly the same. Sharp, efficient, no nonsense. I almost lost my nerve. "Margaret, it's Emma. Emma Tors. Well, Emma Peterson now, but you knew me as Tors." There was a pause. Then, "Emma, my God, I haven't heard from you in years. How are you?" I hesitated. How was I? Heartbroken, furious, liberated, all of the above. "I'm ready to get back to work." Another pause, longer this time. "You want to come back to the agency?" "I want to come back to marketing," I said, and I was surprised by how firm my voice sounded. Whether that's at the agency or somewhere else, I'm not picky. I just need to get back in the game. "Emma," Margaret's voice softened slightly. "It's been 7 years. The industry has changed. Digital marketing now is completely different from when you left. Social media algorithms, influencer marketing, AI integration, data analytics, it's a whole new world." "I know," I said, "and I'm ready to learn. Margaret, I was good at this. You know I may be rusty, but I'm not starting from zero. And I'm hungry in a way I wasn't even back then. Give me a chance, any chance. I'll take an entry-level position. I'll intern if I have to. I just need to get my foot back in the door." I could hear her thinking, weighing the risk. Finally, she said, "Tell you what, come in tomorrow. Let's have coffee, talk about where you've been and where you want to go. I can't promise anything, Emma. We're fully staffed, and honestly, bringing on someone who's been out of the industry for this long is a risk. But I'm willing to hear you out, for old time's sake, if nothing else." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. "Thank you, Margaret. I'll be there. Just tell me when and where." We set up a meeting for the next morning at 9. After I hung up, I sat there for a moment, my heart pounding. This was real. This was happening. I was actually doing this. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I made more calls. To old colleagues who might remember me. To industry contacts I'd let slip away. I updated my LinkedIn profile, which I hadn't touched in years. I started researching current marketing trends, reading articles, watching webinars, absorbing everything I could about what had changed in the 7 years I'd been gone. I worked all day, barely stopping to eat, and it felt amazing. My brain was firing in ways it hadn't in years. I was thinking strategically, creatively, ambitiously. I was remembering what it felt like to challenge myself, to learn, to grow. By evening, I was exhausted but exhilarated. I ordered takeout, something I never did because James preferred home-cooked meals, and ate it straight from the container while reading a case study on a successful viral marketing campaign. I didn't set the table. I didn't use proper dishes. I didn't care about the mess. And it felt incredible. Around 8 o'clock, my phone buzzed. A text from James. "Need to pick up some clothes tomorrow around noon. Will you be there?" I stared at the message. The old Emma would have immediately rearranged her day to accommodate him. Would have made sure the house was perfect, maybe even baked something, tried to create an opportunity to talk, to fix things, to convince him to stay. The new Emma, or rather the real Emma, typed back, "I have a meeting. I'll leave a key under the mat." His response came quickly. "A meeting? For what?" I smiled. "Logistics," I typed back, using his own word. Then I turned off my phone. I spent that evening doing something else I hadn't done in years. I called my old best friend, Rachel. We'd been inseparable in college and in those first years of work. But after I married James, we drifted apart. Or rather, I drifted away. Rachel had tried to maintain our friendship, but I'd been so wrapped up in being the perfect wife that I'd let one of the most important relationships in my life just fade. I didn't even know if she'd answer, but she did on the second ring. Emma. Hey, Rach. Oh my God, Emma, it's been, 3 years since we actually talked? I know, I said, and I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I was a terrible friend. What's going on? Are you okay? You sound different. And just like that, it all came pouring out. Everything. The cruel words, the other woman, the 7 years of making myself smaller, the decision to reclaim my life. Rachel listened to all of it without interrupting, and when I finally finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Thank God." I laughed, surprised. Thank God. Emma, I've been waiting for this phone call for 7 years. We all were, everyone who knew you before James. We watched you disappear into that marriage like you were being erased, and we didn't know how to help you. You wouldn't listen. You just kept insisting everything was perfect, that you were happy, that this was what you wanted. I thought it was, I admitted. I really did. I know you did, sweetie, but the Emma I knew, the Emma I loved, she wouldn't have recognized the woman you became, and honestly, I missed her. I missed you, the real you. I felt tears stinging my eyes. I missed her too. So what are you going to do? I have a meeting tomorrow with my old boss. I'm going to get my career back. I'm going to get my life back. And I'm going to show James exactly what he's losing. Now that, Rachel said, and I could hear the smile in her voice, sounds like the Emma I remember. Listen, I'm taking you out this weekend. No arguments. We're going to celebrate your liberation and we're going to start rebuilding your life. The right way this time. After we hung up, I realized I was crying, but they weren't sad tears. They were relief. They were release. They were the tears of someone who'd been holding her breath for 7 years and was finally allowed to breathe again. I went to bed early because I needed to be sharp for my meeting with Margaret. As I lay there in the darkness, in the bed I'd shared with a man who thought I wasn't good enough, I made myself a promise. I was going to walk away from this marriage. I was going to rebuild my career. I was going to rediscover who Emma Torres really was. And I was going to do it all with so much grace, so much success, so much undeniable brilliance that James would spend the rest of his life knowing he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. Not because I wanted him back. I didn't. That door was closed and locked and I'd thrown away the key. But because I deserved to see myself shine again, and if my shine happened to blind him in the process, well, that was just a bonus. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. I dressed carefully in my power suit. I styled my hair. I perfected my makeup. I looked like I meant business because I did. The meeting with Margaret was at a coffee shop downtown, a trendy place that hadn't existed when I'd last been in the working world. I arrived 15 minutes early, ordered a black coffee, and waited. When Margaret walked in, I stood up to greet her. She looked exactly the same, sharp bob, designer glasses, an energy that suggested she was already 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. She smiled when she saw me. "Emma Torres, you look like you're ready to conquer the world." "Just ready to get back in it," I said. We sat down and for the next 2 hours we talked. I was honest with her about everything, about why I'd left, about the years I'd spent as a housewife, about my marriage falling apart, about needing to rebuild my life from scratch. And you know what? She didn't judge me. She didn't tell me I'd made terrible choices or thrown away a promising career. She just listened. And then she told me the truth. The industry has changed, Emma. What worked 7 years ago doesn't work now. You're going to have to start over in a lot of ways. Relearn everything. Prove yourself all over again. It won't be easy. I know, I said. I'm ready for that. She studied me for a long moment. I believe you are, okay. Here's what I can offer. We have a need for a junior strategist. It's entry level and honestly it pays about half what you were making when you left. But it's a foot in the door. If you can prove you've still got what it takes, there's room to move up. We're a meritocracy. You do good work, you get rewarded. Simple as that. A junior position. Entry-level pay. Starting over at the bottom at 32 years old. The old Emma, the one who defined herself by her husband's success and status, would have been humiliated. But the real Emma, she didn't hesitate. "When do I start?" Margaret smiled, a real genuine smile that reached her eyes. "How about Monday? That gives you the weekend to prepare yourself mentally. Trust me, you're going to need it." I left that coffee shop walking on air. I had a job, an actual job. It wasn't glamorous and it wasn't what I'd had before, but it was mine. It was a start. It was a way back to myself. I spent the weekend preparing. I bought new work clothes, updated my portfolio, studied everything I could about current marketing trends and strategies. Rachel took me out Saturday night like she'd promised, and we went to this little wine bar and talked for hours. She caught me up on her life, her career as a lawyer, her recent engagement to a woman named Sophia who sounded absolutely perfect for her. And I told her everything, not just about James, but about who I'd become in those 7 years, how I'd slowly stopped having opinions, how I'd learned to read his moods and adjust myself accordingly, how I'd measured my worth by his satisfaction with me, how I'd actually believed that being chosen by him was enough of an achievement that I didn't need my own. Rachel listened to all of it, and then she said something I'll never forget. "Emma, you know what the saddest part of all this is? James didn't just tell you that you weren't wife material. He made you believe you weren't anything material. Not friend material, not professional material, not even your own person material. He convinced you that your only value was in how well you served him. And the worst part? You were so good at it that he got bored. You can never win a game where the rules are designed to make you lose." She was right. God, she was so right. I had played by his rules, his mother's rules, society's rules about what a good wife should be, and I'd still lost, because the game was rigged from the start. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. Sunday afternoon, James came by to get more of his clothes. I'd left the key under the mat like I said I would, and I'd made sure I wasn't home. I went to a bookstore, bought a stack of marketing books, and sat in a cafe reading until I was sure he'd be gone. When I got home, I found another note. This one was longer. "Emma, we need to talk about the house, our accounts, everything. I've contacted a lawyer. You should do the same. I want this to be amicable. There's no reason we can't handle this like adults. I hope you're doing okay. Despite everything, I do care about you, James." I read it twice, looking for the trap in the kind words, and I found it. "I hope you're doing okay." As if he was worried about me. As if he hadn't been the one to detonate our entire life. As if his caring meant anything after what he'd said. And that line about being amicable, that was code for, "I hope you won't fight me for what's rightfully yours." James made good money, but the house, I'd bought it before we got married with money my grandmother left me. My name was on the deed. Half our savings were from my salary back when I was working. I'd given up my career, but I hadn't been financially dependent on him, not in the beginning. I called a lawyer first thing Monday morning, before I even went to my first day of work. Her name was Patricia Valdez, and Rachel had recommended her. She was known for being tough, thorough, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. "Tell me everything," Patricia said when we spoke on the phone. "And I mean everything. Assets, debts, whose name is on what, the whole picture." I laid it all out for her. She listened, asked sharp questions, and then said, "Okay, here's the situation. The house is yours, that's clear cut. The savings are joint, so that gets split. His retirement accounts accumulated during the marriage, so you're entitled to half of that growth. The tricky part is going to be whether you pursue spousal support." "I don't want his money," I said immediately. "Emma, listen to me. You gave up 7 years of career growth for this marriage. You quit your job at his encouragement. You sacrificed your earning potential. You're entitled to support while you rebuild your career. This isn't about wanting his money. It's about being fairly compensated for what you gave up." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to just walk away clean, take nothing but what was mine, prove I didn't need him. But Patricia was right. I had sacrificed my career. I was starting over at entry level at 32. That had real financial consequences. "Okay," I said finally, "do what you think is fair." "Fair isn't what he's going to offer," Patricia said. "Fair is what we're going to fight for. Let me handle this. You just focus on your new job and rebuilding your life. That's the best revenge anyway." She had no idea how right she was. My first day at the agency was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The office had moved to a new building, all glass and modern design and open workspaces. Everyone looked so young. Had I ever been that young, that confident, that hungry? Margaret introduced me to the team. There were about 15 people in the strategy department, and I was pretty sure I was the oldest one by at least 5 years. Most of them looked fresh out of college, with their trendy clothes and their easy familiarity with technology and their casual references to apps and platforms I'd never heard of. My desk was in a shared space with 3 other junior strategists. There was Kyle, a 24-year-old who'd apparently already won some kind of industry award for a viral campaign he'd created. There was Priya, who couldn't have been more than 23 but spoke about consumer psychology like she had a PhD. And there was Marcus, who was quiet but whose ideas, I'd quickly learn, were absolutely brilliant. They were polite to me, but I could see the questions in their eyes. Who was this older woman taking a junior position? What was her story? I didn't explain. I just put my head down and worked. That first week was brutal. Everything had changed. The software was different. The terminology was different. The way people consumed media was completely different. I felt like I was learning a new language while everyone else was speaking fluently. But I didn't give up. I stayed late every night, taking notes, watching tutorials, asking questions. I made mistakes, lots of them. I pitched an idea in my first team meeting that was met with polite silence before Kyle gently explained why that approach hadn't worked since 2015. I wanted to crawl under my desk and disappear, but instead, I thanked him for the feedback and asked him to explain what would work now. And you know what? He did. He spent 20 minutes after the meeting breaking down current best practices for me. That became my strategy. Ask questions. Admit what I didn't know. Learn from everyone, even the people who were a decade younger than me. Check my ego at the door and just absorb everything like a sponge. It was humbling. It was exhausting. But slowly, I started to find my footing. And here's the thing nobody tells you about starting over. When you're rebuilding from the ground up, every small victory feels massive. The first time I successfully used the new project management software, I felt like I'd won an Olympic medal. The first time I contributed an idea to a brainstorming session and people actually nodded and built on it, I was flying high for days. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings were starting to heat up. James's lawyer sent over his proposed settlement. Patricia called me after reviewing it, and I could hear the anger in her voice. He's offering you 30% of the joint savings and nothing else. No spousal support, no share of his retirement, nothing. He's claiming that since you're employed now, you don't need support. And get this, he wants you to buy out his half of the house. Buy out his half. It's my house. My grandmother's money bought it. I know, but his name is on the deed too, isn't it? You added him after you got married. I had, because that's what you do when you get married, right? You combine everything, you become a unit, you share. Don't worry, Patricia said. We're going to fight this. I'm going to send back a counteroffer that's actually fair. Be prepared though, this might get ugly. She was right. Over the next few weeks, the lawyers went back and forth. James's position was that I'd made my own choice to quit my job, that he'd never forced me, and therefore I wasn't entitled to anything beyond a basic split of joint assets. My position, as Patricia presented it, was that I'd quit at his strong encouragement, that I'd sacrificed my career to support his, and that I deserved to be compensated for that sacrifice. Meanwhile, I was working 60-hour weeks trying to prove myself at the agency. I was learning, growing, pushing myself harder than I had in years, and something amazing was happening. I was getting good again. The skills were coming back. My creative instincts were sharpening. My strategic thinking was returning. 3 weeks into the job, I was assigned to a real project. It was small, a local restaurant chain that wanted to increase their social media presence, but it was mine. I was the lead strategist with Kyle as my assistant, me leading Kyle, the award winner. I was terrified I'd mess it up. But I didn't. I threw everything I had at that project. I researched their target demographic. I analyzed their competitors. I studied what was working in restaurant marketing. And then I put together a strategy that combined traditional marketing wisdom with new school social media tactics. When I presented it to the client, they loved it. Not liked it, loved it. They approved the full budget and asked if I could start implementation immediately. Margaret pulled me aside after the meeting. "That was impressive, Emma. Really impressive. You've still got it." Those 4 words meant more to me than I can explain. I'd spent 7 years being told I wasn't enough, and now someone was telling me I still had it, that I was still good at something, that I had value beyond being someone's wife. I went home that night, and for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I cried. But they were good tears, healing tears, tears of someone who was finally finding her way back to herself. Of course, that's when James decided to reach out directly. I got a text from him late that night. "Can we meet? Just to talk. This doesn't have to be so adversarial." I stared at that message for a long time. The old Emma would have said yes immediately, would have seen it as a chance to fix things, to make him understand, maybe even to convince him to come back. The new Emma knew better. This wasn't about talking. This was about him trying to manipulate me into accepting his terrible settlement offer without a fight. I texted back, "Anything you need to say can go through our lawyers. That's what we're paying them for." His response was quick. "I just think we could handle this better between ourselves. Be reasonable, Emma." Be reasonable. There it was. The same tactic he'd used throughout our marriage. Whenever I'd expressed a need or want that didn't align with his, I was being unreasonable. Whenever I'd pushed back against his mother's criticism, I was being unreasonable. Whenever I'd suggested maybe I wanted to keep working, I was being unreasonable. "I am being reasonable," I typed back. "I'm protecting my interests. That's what reasonable people do." He didn't respond to that, but 2 days later, Patricia called me with an update. "He's increased his offer. 40% of savings, a small amount of spousal support for 1 year, and he's dropped his claim to half the house. He'll sign it over to you completely." "That's better," I said. "It's still not fair," Patricia countered. "We're going to push for more. You're entitled to more." "Do it," I said, and I meant it. Because here's what I was learning. Standing up for yourself, fighting for what you deserve, refusing to make yourself small to make someone else comfortable. That wasn't being difficult. That wasn't being unreasonable. That was being strong. That was being smart. That was being the woman I should have been all along. Work continued to go well. My restaurant campaign launched, and within 2 weeks, their social media engagement had increased by 40%. The client was thrilled. Margaret was impressed. And I was assigned to a bigger project, a regional retail chain that wanted a complete digital marketing overhaul. I was working with a bigger team this time, and I wasn't the lead, but I was a key strategist. And you know what? I held my own. I contributed ideas that got used. I spotted problems that others missed. I was becoming invaluable. And then, about 6 weeks into my new job, I found out who the other woman was. I was at a networking event, one of those industry mixer things that I was forcing myself to attend even though they made me anxious. I was talking to a woman from another agency when she mentioned that her colleague had just gotten engaged. "Really happy for her," the woman said. "Though it's a bit messy, he's still technically married, going through a divorce, but when you know, right?" Something in my gut told me to ask, "What's her name? Maybe I know her." "Vanessa Price. She does corporate consulting. Really brilliant woman, actually. Her fiancé works in finance." The room tilted. Vanessa Price. I knew that name. She'd been at James's office party 2 years ago. She'd been the one he'd talked to for almost an hour while I stood awkwardly by the buffet table. She'd been the one he'd mentioned occasionally in passing. Vanessa had a great insight in our meeting today. Vanessa suggested a new approach to the merger. Vanessa thinks I should push for that promotion. Vanessa. Of course it was Vanessa. "Everything okay?" the woman asked, noticing my expression. "Fine," I managed. "Just realized I know who you're talking about. Small world." I excused myself and went to the bathroom, where I locked myself in a stall and tried to breathe. Engaged. They were already engaged. How long had he been with her? How long had he been planning to leave me while I was cooking his dinners and doing his laundry and playing the perfect wife? I pulled out my phone and did something I'd been avoiding. I looked up Vanessa Price on social media. There she was, beautiful, polished professional. Her LinkedIn profile was impressive, full of credentials and accomplishments. Her Instagram was a carefully curated collection of success and sophistication. And there, 3 posts down, was a photo of a hand with a ring. A big, expensive ring. The caption read, "Sometimes the best things come when you least expect them. So grateful for this next chapter." The post was from 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. We'd been separated for 6 weeks, and 2 weeks ago he'd proposed to her. I scrolled through more photos. There she was at conferences, at networking events, at fancy restaurants. And occasionally, in older photos, there was James. In the background at first, then more prominently. The photos went back months. At least 8 months, maybe more. He'd been cheating on me for most of a year before he'd finally worked up the nerve to tell me I wasn't wife material. I should have felt devastated. I should have cried or screamed or fallen apart. But you know what I felt? Angry, furious, but also free. Because this wasn't about me not being good enough. This was about him being a cheater and a liar. This was about him rewriting our entire marriage in his head to justify his betrayal. This was about him being too cowardly to just admit he wanted someone else, so instead he'd spent months tearing me down until I believed I was the problem. I walked out of that bathroom with my head high. I went back to the networking event. I talked to people, exchanged business cards, made connections. I acted like the professional I was becoming again. And when I got home that night, I called Patricia. "I need you to find out everything about Vanessa Price," I said. "When their relationship started, how long it's been going on, all of it. Because if he was cheating during our marriage, that changes things, doesn't it?" "It absolutely does," Patricia said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "In this state, infidelity can affect the division of assets. Let me do some digging. This might get interesting." Interesting was one word for it. I had others. The next few weeks were a blur. I was working harder than ever at the agency, and it was paying off. My retail campaign was exceeding all expectations. The client loved our work. Margaret pulled me aside one day and said something that made my entire month. "Emma, I'm moving you up. You're not junior anymore. As of next week, you're a full strategist, with the salary to match." I'd been there 2 months. 2 months, and I was already being promoted, because I was good, because I worked hard. Because I had value that had nothing to do with being someone's wife. I celebrated by taking Rachel and her fiancé, Sophia, out to dinner. We went to an expensive restaurant, the kind James and I used to go to for special occasions. But this time I was paying, with my own money, from my own job, celebrating my own achievement. "Look at you," Rachel said, raising her glass. 2 months ago, you were a housewife whose husband told her she wasn't enough. Now you're a rising star at a top agency, fighting for what you deserve in your divorce and absolutely glowing. I'm so proud of you." "I'm proud of me too," I said, and I meant it. For the first time in 7 years, I was genuinely proud of myself. But if I thought things were going well, I had no idea what was coming. Because Patricia's digging had turned up something very, very interesting. She called me on a Friday afternoon, right as I was wrapping up work for the week. "Emma, you're going to want to sit down for this." I sat. "What did you find?" Vanessa Price was hired as a consultant by James's company 18 months ago. That's when they met. According to some emails I've managed to obtain through discovery, their relationship turned personal about 14 months ago. Do you know what that means? I did the math. 14 months ago, we were still very much married. I was still making his dinners and attending his company events and playing the devoted wife. "He was cheating for over a year," I said flatly. "Yes, and here's the beautiful part. 3 months ago, the same month he started talking about divorce, his company gave him a massive promotion. Big salary increase, stock options, the works. He knew that promotion was coming, Emma, and he knew that if he divorced you after getting it, you'd be entitled to a portion of those assets. So he started the divorce proceedings before it was official. He timed it, I said slowly. He planned the whole thing. Exactly. He wanted to leave you before his financial situation improved so you'd get less. And he's been trying to lowball you in the settlement because he knows you don't know about the promotion or the stock options yet. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, processing this information. The man I'd spent 7 years with had coldly, calculatedly planned to leave me in a way that would minimize what I was entitled to. He'd called me unreasonable for getting a lawyer, when all along he'd been strategically maneuvering to cheat me out of what was rightfully mine. What do? I asked. We go for the throat, Patricia said. We file an amended petition including the new financial information. We push for a much larger share of assets based on his infidelity and financial deception. And we make it very clear that if he doesn't settle fairly, we're prepared to go to trial and make all of this public record. Do it, I said without hesitation. Emma, are you sure? This is going to get ugly. He's going to fight back. It's going to be stressful. I'm sure, I said. I spent 7 years making myself smaller for that man. I'm not doing it anymore. Not in marriage, not in divorce. He wants to see what I'm really made of. Let's show him. That weekend, I did something I'd been putting off. I went through all the photos from our marriage. 7 years of carefully documented moments. Vacations, holidays, parties, ordinary days. In every single photo, I looked small. Not physically, but energetically. I was always slightly behind him, slightly out of focus, slightly faded into the background. Even in photos that were supposed to be about me, my birthday parties, I looked like a supporting character in my own life. There was one photo in particular that struck me. It was from our 5th anniversary. We'd gone to an expensive restaurant, and the waiter had taken our picture. James was looking at the camera, confident and comfortable. I was looking at James, seeking his approval, making sure he was happy with the photo, with the evening with me. I'd spent our entire marriage looking at him, trying to read him, trying to please him. I'd never once stopped to look at myself and ask what I wanted, what I needed, what would make me happy. I deleted every single photo of us from my phone, all of them. 7 years gone in 15 minutes. And you know what? It felt amazing, like cutting dead weight, like shedding a skin that had never fit right. Then I took a selfie, just me in my apartment in casual clothes, no makeup, messy hair. But I was looking directly at the camera, looking at myself, really seeing myself for the first time in years. I wasn't smiling, but I wasn't sad either. I just looked, real, present, there. I posted it on my Instagram, which I'd barely used during my marriage. The caption was simple, learning to take up space again. The responses were immediate. Rachel commented with heart emojis, and that's my girl. Old college friends I hadn't heard from in years reached out. Even a few colleagues from the agency liked it. But the most surprising response came from Kyle, my young colleague. He sent me a direct message. I don't know your story, but whatever you're going through, it seems like you're handling it like a boss. You're inspiring to watch at work. I stared at that message for a long time. Me, inspiring. The woman who'd felt like a fraud for weeks, struggling to keep up with people half her age. But maybe that was the point. Maybe inspiration wasn't about being perfect or having it all together. Maybe it was about showing up every day and doing the work, even when it was hard. Even when you felt like you didn't belong. Even when you were rebuilding from rubble. Monday morning, Patricia filed the amended petition. By Monday afternoon, James's lawyer was calling her, furious. By Monday evening, James himself was texting me. What the hell are you doing, Emma? This is insane. You're being vindictive. I didn't respond immediately. I was in a strategy meeting, actually, presenting a campaign idea that the client ended up loving. When I finally checked my phone an hour later, there were 5 more messages from him. We can settle this reasonably if you just stop being so emotional. My lawyer says you're making claims that are completely unfounded. I never thought you'd be this kind of person. Vanessa says I should just take you to court. Is that what you want? That last one made me laugh out loud. Vanessa says, He was taking advice about our divorce from the woman he'd cheated on me with. The irony was too perfect. I finally typed back one message. Your lawyer knows where to find my lawyer. I have nothing to say to you directly. His response was fast and angry. You've changed, Emma, and not in a good way. I read that message 3 times, and then I smiled, because he was right. I had changed. I'd stopped being the woman who made herself small for him. I'd stopped being the woman who measured her worth by his approval. I'd stopped being the woman who would accept crumbs and call it a feast. I'd changed back into myself, and if he didn't like it, well, that wasn't my problem anymore. I typed one final message. You're right, I have changed. I stopped being the woman you could walk all over, and you're absolutely right that it's not in a good way, for you. Then I blocked his number, just completely blocked it. If he needed to communicate, he could do it through lawyers. I was done giving him direct access to me. That night I went home to my apartment, the space that was fully mine now, and I felt something I hadn't felt since this whole thing started. Peace. Real, genuine peace. Not the fake peace of denial or avoidance, but the hard-won peace of someone who'd been through fire and come out stronger. Was I completely healed? No. Was I still angry sometimes? Absolutely. Did I have moments where I questioned everything and wondered if I'd made the right choices? Of course. But I was moving forward. I was building something real. And every day, I was becoming more and more the woman I was always supposed to be. The woman James had tried to dim was finally starting to shine again. And the best part, this was only the beginning. The next month brought changes so fast I could barely keep up with them. The divorce proceedings were getting more contentious by the day, but strangely, I found that I cared less and less about the drama James was creating. Because while he was busy being angry that I wouldn't just roll over and accept his lowball offers, I was busy becoming someone I actually liked. Work had become my sanctuary. Every morning I woke up excited to go to the office. Excited. When was the last time I'd felt excited about anything? I couldn't even remember. My retail campaign was performing so well that the client had extended their contract and increased their budget. Margaret had started pulling me into bigger meetings, asking for my input on pitches for major accounts. I was being trusted, valued, seen. And I was making friends. Real friends. Not the shallow acquaintances I'd maintained during my marriage, the other wives at James's company events who I had nothing in common with except our husband's employer. These were people who knew me as Emma the strategist, not Emma the wife. They liked me for my ideas, my work ethic, my perspective. Priya and I had started having lunch together regularly. She was brilliant and funny and had no filter whatsoever. One day, about 3 months into my time at the agency, she asked me directly what everyone had probably been wondering. So what's your story? No offense, but you're older than most junior people, and you came in with this energy like you had something to prove. I've been dying to know. I hesitated. I hadn't talked about my personal life at work. I'd kept everything professional, separate. But something about Priya's direct, judgment-free curiosity made me feel safe. I was married, I said. I quit my job to be a wife, spent 7 years making myself smaller and smaller until I basically disappeared. Then my husband told me I wasn't good enough and that he'd found someone better, so I decided to find myself again. Priya was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she said, "Damn, that's actually badass. Like the ending part, not the marriage part, that sounds awful. But the way you just came back and started over, most people wouldn't have the guts." I didn't feel gutsy, I admitted. I felt terrified. Yeah, but you did it anyway. That's what guts are, being scared and doing it anyway. She paused, then added, "For what it's worth, I think you're really good at this job. Like, really good. Some of the junior people who have been here longer than you are jealous of how fast you're advancing, which is hilarious because they don't know you're actually not a beginner, you're a comeback." A comeback? I liked that. Not starting over, but coming back, returning to who I'd always been. That afternoon, I got called into Margaret's office. My stomach dropped. In my experience, being called to the boss's office was rarely good news. But when I walked in, Margaret was smiling. "Sit down, Emma. I have a proposition for you." I sat, trying not to look as nervous as I felt. We just landed a huge account, Margaret continued. One of the biggest we've had in years. A national fitness brand that's looking to completely rebrand and relaunch their digital presence. It's a 6-month project, high profile and honestly, high pressure. The client is demanding and the timeline is tight. I nodded, unsure where this was going. I want you on the team, not as a junior member but as co-lead strategist. You'd be working directly with David. You know David, senior strategist, been here 10 years. It would be you and him heading up the strategic direction with a team of 5 working under you. I stared at her. Me, Margaret, I've only been here 3 months. I know exactly how long you've been here. I also know that in those 3 months, you've proven yourself to be one of the sharpest strategic minds we have. You see things other people miss. You understand consumer psychology in a way that can't be taught. And you work harder than anyone else in that department. So yes, you, if you want it. If I wanted it. She was offering me a leadership role on a major account and asking if I wanted it. 3 months ago, I'd been a housewife whose husband thought she was worthless. Now I was being offered a position that would have been a dream even back in my old career. I want it, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Thank you, Margaret, I won't let you down. I know you won't. That's why I'm giving you the opportunity. She paused, then said something that hit me right in the chest. Emma, I don't know what happened in your personal life that brought you back to this industry, but whatever it was, I'm grateful for it. You're exactly the kind of person I want on my team. Hungry, humble, and talented as hell. Don't lose that. I left her office feeling like I was floating. A major account. Co-lead strategist. Me, Emma Torres, who 3 months ago couldn't even figure out the project management software. I called Rachel immediately. She screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Emma, this is incredible. We're celebrating. Tonight, I'm taking you out and we're getting champagne and I'm going to brag about you to everyone in the restaurant. You don't have to do that, I laughed. Oh, I absolutely do. My best friend is a badass and the world needs to know. That night, Rachel and I went to a trendy rooftop bar. She brought Sophia and I invited Priya, who I'd mentioned to Rachel before. The 4 of us sat under the city lights, drinking champagne, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt completely, genuinely happy. Not happy because someone else was happy with me. Not happy because I was fulfilling some role correctly. Just happy because I was exactly where I was supposed to be, with people who saw me and valued me for who I actually was. Can I say something? Sophia asked. She was quieter than Rachel, more reserved, but when she spoke, it was always thoughtful. I know we've only met a few times, Emma, but I've watched you transform over these last few months. Rachel shows me your Instagram posts, tells me about your wins at work. And I just want to say, as someone who also had to rebuild her life after a bad relationship, watching you do it is inspiring. You should be really proud of yourself. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you, that means a lot. Also, Priya interjected, raising her glass, your ex-husband is an idiot. Just wanted to get that on record. We all laughed and toasted to that. To idiotic ex-husbands and new beginnings and women who refuse to stay small. But of course, the universe has a sense of humor. Because just as I was riding high on my professional success, the divorce proceedings exploded into full warfare. Patricia called me the next morning with an update. James's lawyer filed a motion claiming you're hiding assets. They're saying your new job and promotion prove you never needed spousal support and that you've been misrepresenting your employability. That's insane, I said. I got this job after we separated, and I got it because I worked my ass off, not because I was hiding some secret career the whole time. I know that, you know that, but they're trying to paint a picture of you as someone who was perfectly capable of working all along and chose not to, therefore you're not entitled to support for the career gap. It's a stretch, and honestly, it's a weak argument, but it's going to drag things out. Let them drag it out, I said. I'm not backing down. Good, because I have some news on our end too. Remember how I was looking into the timeline of his relationship with Vanessa? I found some emails between them that are, let's just say, very revealing. including one from 16 months ago where he explicitly talks about leaving you once his financial situation improves. He literally planned this, Emma, in writing. I felt cold fury wash over me. It was one thing to suspect he'd been calculated about the divorce. It was another to have written proof that he'd been plotting it for over a year, while I was still making his dinner and sleeping in his bed. What does this mean for the case? It means we have evidence of both infidelity and financial manipulation. It strengthens our position significantly. I'm going to push harder on the settlement. He can either agree to fair terms or we go to trial and all of this becomes public record. His choice. For the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into work while the lawyers battled it out. The fitness brand project was everything Margaret had promised: demanding, high pressure, exhilarating. David, my co-lead, was initially skeptical about working with someone so new to the agency, but after our first strategy session, he changed his tune. "You're good," he said, sounding almost surprised. "Like really good. Where did Margaret find you?" "I used to work here, actually. About 7 years ago. I left and now I'm back." "Well, welcome back. I think we're going to make a good team." We did make a good team. David was analytical and data-driven, while I was more intuitive and consumer-focused. Together, we developed a strategy that the client called innovative and exactly what we've been looking for. Working on something that big, that important, didn't leave much room for wallowing in divorce drama. I was too busy to obsess over what James was doing or saying, too focused to care about his attempts to paint me as the bad guy. I had actual important work to do. But then, about 4 months into my return to work, something happened that I wasn't prepared for. I ran into James. I was at a professional networking event, one of those evening mixers where people from different industries meet and pretend to enjoy small talk. I was there representing the agency, chatting with a potential client, when I saw him across the room. He saw me at the same moment, and the look on his face was priceless. He clearly hadn't expected to see me there. Why would he? In his mind, I was probably at home, crying over our failed marriage, struggling to figure out my life. He definitely wasn't expecting to see me in a designer suit, hair and makeup professionally done, laughing confidently with a group of people who were clearly impressed by whatever I was saying. I watched him watch me, saw the confusion on his face, then something else. Recognition, maybe, or regret. I couldn't tell, and honestly, I didn't care. I turned back to my conversation, deliberately giving him my back. I wasn't going to let him interrupt my networking. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. But he approached anyway. Of course he did. "Emma," he said, appearing at my elbow, "can we talk?" I turned to him, keeping my expression neutral. "I'm actually in the middle of a conversation, James. Excuse me." I turned back to the potential client, a woman named Jennifer who owned a chain of boutique hotels. James didn't leave. He just stood there, hovering awkwardly. Jennifer looked between us, clearly sensing tension. "I'm sorry," I said to her. "This is my soon-to-be ex-husband. He seems to have forgotten that we're not supposed to be communicating directly. James, you need to leave." "I just want to talk," he said, and there was something in his voice I'd never heard before. Uncertainty, maybe. You look really good, Emma." "Thank you. Now if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." I deliberately emphasized the word work, watching him flinch. "You're really working here, at a networking event?" "Yes, James, I'm a strategist at Chen Marketing Agency. This is what I do. This is who I am. Now please go away." He opened his mouth like he wanted to say more, but Jennifer intervened. "I think the lady asked you to leave. You should probably respect that." James looked at her, then back at me, then finally walked away. But I caught him looking back at me several times throughout the evening, and each time I made sure I looked busy, engaged, successful. Everything he'd claimed I wasn't. After the event, Jennifer pulled me aside. "I don't know the story there, but I like your style. You handled that with class, and I like what you were saying about experiential marketing for hotels. Send me a proposal. I'd love to see what your agency could do for us." I got her business card, trying not to shake with the adrenaline still coursing through me. I just landed a potential major client while simultaneously showing James exactly what he'd lost. It was the most empowering moment I'd had since this whole thing started. That night, I got home to find an email from James. It had come to my personal account, which I hadn't blocked like I had his number. The subject line was, "We need to talk." I should have deleted it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. "Emma, seeing you tonight was a shock. I had no idea you were working again, and at that level, you seemed so different, so confident. It made me realize that maybe I didn't really know you as well as I thought I did, or maybe you've changed. Either way, I think we should talk face to face without lawyers. There are things I need to say to you, things I need to explain. Please, just give me one conversation. James." I read it 3 times, looking for the manipulation, the angle, the trap, and I found it in that phrase. Maybe I didn't really know you as well as I thought I did. He didn't know me because he'd never bothered to really look. He'd been so busy molding me into what he wanted that he'd never once asked who I actually was. And now that I was successful again, now that I was thriving, suddenly he wanted to talk. Suddenly there were things he needed to explain. "Too late. Yours too late." I hit reply and typed, "James, there is nothing you need to explain and nothing I need to hear. You told me I wasn't wife material. You were right. I'm not material for being your wife. I'm material for so much more than that. Move on with your life. I'm moving on with mine." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I blocked his email too. Every avenue of direct communication closed. He could talk to my lawyer if he had something to say. The next morning, Patricia called with news. "He's agreed to settle. Full terms. Everything we asked for. He's giving you 50% of the joint savings, 2 years of spousal support, a share of his retirement growth during the marriage, and he's signing the house over to you completely with no buyout requirement." I sat down hard. He agreed to everything. Everything. His lawyer said he just wants this done. He'll sign the papers as soon as we draw them up. "What changed?" I asked, though I had a feeling I knew. "I don't know, but something did. My guess. He saw you last night and realized he screwed up. Classic buyer's remorse. But whatever the reason, we won, Emma. You won." I should have felt triumphant, and part of me did, but mostly I just felt tired. Tired of fighting, tired of thinking about James, tired of letting him take up any more space in my brain. "Draw up the papers," I said. "Let's end this." Over the next 2 weeks, the divorce was finalized. 7 years of marriage ended with signatures on paper. It should have felt momentous, but it just felt like closing a book I'd finished reading. The story was over. Time to move on to the next one. The day the divorce was final, I didn't cry or celebrate or feel much of anything except relief. It was done. I was free. Legally, officially, completely free. Rachel wanted to throw me a divorce party, but I declined. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I just wanted to quietly close that chapter and focus on the life I was building. But I did do one thing to mark the occasion. I went to a jewelry store and bought myself a ring. Not a wedding ring, but a beautiful cocktail ring with a deep blue sapphire. I put it on my right hand, and every time I looked at it, I was reminded that I was choosing myself now. I was committing to myself. I was enough all by myself. Work continued to be amazing. The fitness brand campaign launched, and it was a massive success. The client was thrilled, the agency was thrilled, and I was getting recognition not just internally, but in the industry. Marketing publications were writing about the campaign. I was asked to speak on a panel about digital rebranding strategies. Me, speaking on a panel. Emma Torres, who 4 months ago had been so rusty she couldn't work the project management software. The panel was at a major marketing conference, and I was terrified. Public speaking had never been my strong suit, and I was going to be on stage with industry veterans who'd been doing this work continuously while I'd been playing housewife. But Priya gave me a pep talk. "You know your stuff. You've proven that. Just go up there and be yourself. The you that you are now, not the you that you think you should be." The day of the panel, I wore my power suit, my red lipstick, and my sapphire ring. I walked on that stage with my head high, and I spoke about strategy and consumer behavior and the importance of authentic brand storytelling. And people listened. They nodded. They took notes. They asked me questions afterward and wanted my business card. I belonged there. On that stage, in that room, in that industry, I belonged. After the panel, as I was gathering my things, someone approached me. A woman, probably in her late 50s, elegant and commanding. "Emma Torres, I'm Catherine Wright. I run Summit Digital and I've been watching your work. That fitness brand campaign was exceptional. I'd love to talk to you about joining my team." Catherine Wright, I knew that name. Summit Digital was one of the top agencies in the country, and she was trying to recruit me. "I'm flattered," I said, trying not to sound as shocked as I felt. "But I'm very happy at Chen Agency." "I'm sure you are. Margaret runs a good shop. But I can offer you senior strategist position, your own team, and a salary that I think you'll find very competitive. Here's my card. Think about it. No pressure, but I see real leadership potential in you, and I'd love to help you develop it." I took the card, my hand trembling slightly. A headhunter from a top agency, wanting me. I wasn't going to leave Chen Agency. Margaret had given me a chance when no one else would, and I was loyal to that. But the fact that I was being recruited, that I was wanted, that I had options. That felt like the ultimate validation. Not from James, not from his mother, not from society's expectations of what a woman should be, but from my own merit, my own work, my own undeniable talent. I went home that night and looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked. The woman staring back at me was different from the one who'd stood in her kitchen 4 months ago, hands wet from washing dishes, hearing that she wasn't wife material. This woman was strong, confident, successful, whole. This woman didn't need anyone to complete her. She was already complete. And if James could see me now, really see me, not the diminished version of me he'd married, but the full, vibrant, powerful version of me I'd become, I wondered if he'd recognize me at all. But more importantly, I wondered if I'd even care whether he did or not. The answer, I realized with a smile, was no. I really, truly didn't care anymore. I'd spent 4 months proving to myself that I was enough, that I was talented, capable, worthy, that I was, in fact, material for anything I set my mind to. And that was the sweetest victory of all. 3 weeks after the panel, something happened that I never could have predicted. I was in the office, working late on a pitch for a potential client, when I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Emma, this is Vanessa. I need to talk to you. It's important." I stared at my phone in disbelief. Vanessa, the other woman, the one James had left me for, the one he'd called substantial and wife material, she was texting me. My first instinct was to delete it and block the number. What could she possibly have to say to me that I'd want to hear? But curiosity, that dangerous thing, made me respond. "How did you get my number?" "From James's phone. Please, I just need 30 minutes of your time. I know you have no reason to talk to me, but I'm asking anyway. Coffee tomorrow, anywhere you want." This was insane. Why would I meet with my ex-husband's fiancé? What possible good could come from it? But then again, I'd spent the last 4 months becoming a woman who faced things head-on instead of avoiding them. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious about what she wanted. "Tomorrow, 3 p.m., Stella's Coffee on Maple Street," I typed back. It was a public place, busy enough that there'd be witnesses if things got weird, but quiet enough to have a conversation. "Thank you, I'll be there." I told Rachel about it that night, and she thought I was crazy. "Why would you give her any of your time? She slept with your husband while you were married. She doesn't deserve your attention." "I know, but I want to hear what she has to say. Maybe it'll give me closure, or maybe it'll just be entertaining. Either way, I'm going in with my eyes open." The next day, I showed up at Stella's at exactly 3 p.m. Vanessa was already there, sitting at a corner table, looking nervous. She was beautiful, just like in her photos. Polished, professional, put together. Everything James had probably told her I wasn't. I walked over and sat down without ordering anything. "You have 30 minutes, talk." She looked startled by my directness, but recovered quickly. "Thank you for coming. I know you don't owe me anything." "You're right, I don't, so why am I here?" She took a breath. "I wanted to apologize, and I wanted to warn you." "Warn me about what? The divorce is final. James is your problem now." "That's just it," she said, and I could see actual distress in her eyes. "I'm starting to realize that James is not who I thought he was, and I think you deserve to know the truth about how our relationship started, because it's not what he told you." I leaned back in my chair. "I'm listening." "James told you that we met at his office, didn't he? That we fell in love and he realized you weren't right for each other." "Something like that." "That's not how it happened. James pursued me aggressively for months. I was hired as a consultant for his company, and from day one, he was flirting, asking me out, making comments. I turned him down repeatedly because he was married. But he told me the marriage was already over, that you two were staying together out of convenience, but that there was no love left, that you were more like roommates than spouses." I felt my jaw clench. Of course he'd said that. "He made it sound like you were cold, distant, unsupportive. He painted this picture of himself as this lonely man trapped in a loveless marriage with a woman who didn't understand him. And eventually, I believed him. I thought I was helping him escape an unhappy situation." "And you didn't think to verify any of that, to question why a married man was pursuing you so hard?" "I should have," she admitted. "I know I should have, and I take full responsibility for my part in this. But Emma, he lied to me, about everything. The timeline, the state of your marriage, his intentions. He told me he was going to ask you for a divorce months before he actually did. He kept saying he was waiting for the right time, but really, he was waiting for his promotion to go through." "I know about the promotion," I said flatly. "My lawyer uncovered that in discovery." She nodded. "After we got engaged, things started to change. He became critical. Nothing I did was quite right. I was too focused on my career. I wasn't domestic enough. I didn't get along well enough with his mother. He started comparing me to you, believe it or not, saying things like Emma would have handled that differently, or Emma never questioned me like this." I almost laughed. The irony was too perfect. He'd left me for her, and now he was comparing her unfavorably to me. "And then last month, he saw you at that networking event. He came home and couldn't stop talking about you, about how different you looked, how confident, how successful. He kept saying he didn't realize you had it in you, and that's when I started digging into things, really looking at the timeline, reading through old emails, piecing together the truth." "And what truth did you find?" "That he's a liar and a manipulator, that he tells people what they want to hear until he gets what he wants, and then he changes the story. That he's never satisfied because the problem isn't the woman he's with, it's him. And I think," she paused, looking genuinely upset, "I think he's already looking for the next one, his assistant at work. I've noticed things, the same patterns that I missed when he was doing it with me." I sat there, processing all of this. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, but mostly I just felt sorry for her. She was discovering what I'd learned the hard way. James didn't know how to value what he had. He only wanted what he didn't have, and once he had it, he'd start looking for something else. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I realized that the person he destroyed wasn't me. It was you. I was just a weapon he used to do it, and you deserved better. You deserved the truth. And maybe," she hesitated, "maybe I hoped you'd tell me I'm not crazy for seeing these red flags, for wondering if I made a huge mistake." I looked at her for a long moment. This woman had helped destroy my marriage. She'd believed James's lies about me without question. She'd been wearing my ex-husband's ring before our divorce was even final. But she was also clearly where I had been 7 years ago, on the precipice of making herself smaller for a man who would never be satisfied, about to learn the same painful lessons I'd learned. "Vanessa," I said carefully, "I can't tell you what to do with your relationship, that's your choice. But I can tell you what I've learned. James doesn't want a partner. He wants an audience. He wants someone to reflect his own greatness back at him. And the moment you stop doing that, the moment you become a real person with needs and opinions and a life of your own, you'll become the problem, just like I was, just like you're already starting to be." She nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. The question you have to ask yourself is, do you want to spend the next 7 years making yourself smaller and smaller until you don't recognize yourself anymore? Because that's where this is heading. I know because I've lived it. How did you get out? She asked quietly. He pushed me out, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it forced me to remember who I was before him. It forced me to rebuild. And now, I smiled. Now I'm better than I've ever been, stronger, more successful, more myself. And I didn't need him for any of it. In fact, I needed to lose him to find it. She wiped her eyes. I'm sorry for my part in hurting you. I am. I appreciate that, I said, standing up. But my advice, don't be sorry for me. Be smart for yourself. Learn from my mistakes. And don't let any man convince you that you need to be less so he can feel like more. I left her sitting there, and I walked out of that coffee shop feeling lighter. I'd faced the other woman, heard her apology, and realized that I truly, genuinely didn't care anymore. James was her problem now. And if she was smart, she wouldn't let him become her defining problem the way I had. That evening, I got an email from Jennifer, the hotel owner I'd met at the networking event. She wanted to move forward with a marketing partnership. It was a huge account, and she specifically requested that I be the lead strategist. I forwarded the email to Margaret with a note. Looks like networking events are good for more than just dodging ex-husbands. Margaret's response made me laugh. Dodging ex-husbands while landing major clients. That's the kind of multitasking I like to see. Congratulations, Emma. You've earned this. I sat back in my chair, looking around my apartment. It was smaller than the house I'd shared with James, but it was entirely mine. Decorated how I wanted, organized how I liked, filled with things that made me happy instead of things that were appropriate or impressive. On my desk was a vision board I'd created with Rachel's help. It had pictures of career goals, travel destinations, personal achievements I wanted to unlock. At the center was a quote I'd written in my own handwriting. I am not material for anyone's mold. I am the architect of my own design. 5 months ago, I'd been a woman whose husband told her she wasn't good enough. A woman who'd lost herself trying to be what someone else wanted. A woman who'd measured her worth by a man's approval. Now I was a woman with a thriving career, genuine friendships, and most importantly, a relationship with myself that was finally healthy. I was a woman who knew her value and wouldn't settle for anyone who couldn't see it. The revenge I'd gotten wasn't planned or calculated. It wasn't about making James suffer or proving him wrong. The revenge was simply this. I'd become so fully, completely myself that his opinion of me no longer mattered. I'd become so successful that his departure from my life looked less like my loss and more like his mistake. And the best part, this was just the beginning. I wasn't done growing, achieving, or becoming. I was just getting started. If James wanted to watch me walk away, he was going to have to watch me walk straight into a life so much better than anything we'd had together. A life where I was the main character, not the supporting role. A life where I was seen, valued, and appreciated for exactly who I was. And if that made him regret losing me, well, that was just a bonus. Because the real victory wasn't in his regret. It was in my complete and utter indifference to whether he felt it or not. I was free, truly, finally free, and I was flying. 6 months after my meeting with Vanessa, my life had transformed so completely that sometimes I had to pinch myself to make sure it was real. The hotel account I'd landed had turned into 3 more referrals from Jennifer. The fitness brand campaign had won an industry award, and I'd been the one to accept it on stage in front of hundreds of marketing professionals. Margaret had promoted me again, this time to senior strategist with my own team of 5 people reporting to me. I was making more money than I'd ever made in my life. Not James's money, not settlement money, my money. Money I earned with my brain, my creativity, my hard work. And let me tell you, there's a different kind of satisfaction in spending money you earned yourself. Every dollar felt like proof of my worth. But the professional success, as amazing as it was, wasn't even the best part. The best part was that I liked myself again. I enjoyed my own company. I had opinions and I voiced them. I had boundaries and I enforced them. I took up space unapologetically. I was loud when I wanted to be loud and quiet when I chose to be quiet, not when someone else needed me to be. I'd reconnected with old friends from college, from my early career days, people I'd let slip away during my marriage. I'd made new friends through work and through a book club Rachel had dragged me to. I had a full, rich social life that had nothing to do with being someone's plus one. I'd even started dating, though nothing serious. A few dinners here and there, some pleasant conversations, one short relationship that ended amicably when we both realized we wanted different things. And the beautiful part, I wasn't devastated when it ended. I didn't spiral into self-doubt or wonder what was wrong with me. I just acknowledged that it wasn't the right fit and moved on. Because I'd learned the most important lesson. I didn't need a relationship to be complete. I was already whole. A partner would be a bonus, not a requirement. And I would never, ever again shrink myself to fit into someone else's vision of who I should be. I'd also started therapy, which I probably should have done years ago. Dr. Richardson helped me process not just the divorce, but the 7 years of slowly erasing myself. We talked about codependency, about how I'd outsourced my self-worth to James, about the patterns I needed to break so I'd never end up in that situation again. "You're doing the work," she told me in one session. "A lot of people go through a painful divorce and they just jump into the next relationship, repeat the same patterns. But you're actually taking the time to understand yourself, to heal, to grow. That's rare and it's commendable." One evening in late November, almost 10 months after James had told me I wasn't wife material, I was at an industry gala. It was one of those fancy events with an open bar, a sit-down dinner, and awards for various marketing achievements. My agency had been nominated for Campaign of the Year for the fitness brand work, and I was there with Margaret and the rest of the team. I was wearing a stunning navy dress that I'd bought specifically for the occasion, my sapphire ring catching the light every time I moved my hand. My hair was styled in loose waves, my makeup was perfect, and I felt beautiful. Not beautiful for anyone else, but beautiful for me. We were at our table, laughing about something Priya had said when I saw him. James. He was across the room at a different table and he wasn't alone. Vanessa was with him, looking uncomfortable in a tight smile, her hand bare. No engagement ring. That was interesting. He saw me at almost the same moment, and I watched the now familiar sequence of emotions cross his face. Surprise, recognition, and something that looked a lot like longing. He said something to Vanessa and then started walking toward our table. "Oh no," Priya muttered. "Is that him, your ex?" "Yep," I said calmly, "and he's coming this way." "Do you want me to accidentally spill a drink on him?" she offered, and I loved her for it. Tempting, but no, I can handle this. James reached our table looking slightly nervous. Good, he should be nervous. "Emma," he said, you look incredible." "Thank you," I said coolly. "Did you need something, James? I'm here with my colleagues." "I just wanted to say congratulations on your nomination. That's really impressive." "It is," I agreed, not bothering with false modesty. "We worked very hard on that campaign." He stood there awkwardly, clearly wanting to say more but not sure how. Finally, he said, "Could we talk, just for a few minutes? There's a balcony just outside." I looked at Margaret, who raised an eyebrow. "Your call," she said quietly. I considered saying no. I'd already given him more of my time and energy than he deserved. But something made me curious. What could he possibly have to say to me now? "5 minutes," I said, standing up, "and then I'm coming back to enjoy my evening." We walked to the balcony in silence. It overlooked the city, all glittering lights and endless possibility. I stood at the railing, looking out, not at him. "I made a mistake," he said finally. "The biggest mistake of my life." I turned to look at him. "Which mistake are we talking about? Cheating on me? Lying to me? Telling me I wasn't good enough? You're going to have to be more specific." He flinched. "All of it. Emma, I've been watching you these past few months, seeing what you've become, what you've achieved. And I realized that I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me." "No," I said firmly. "You destroyed a woman who was slowly erasing herself to make you comfortable. And in doing so, you freed her to become who she was always meant to be. So in a way, I should thank you. Don't say that. Emma, I know I hurt you. I know I was cruel, but I'm asking. Is there any chance we could try again? Start over. I see now what I couldn't see then. You're remarkable. You always were, I just couldn't appreciate it. I stared at him in genuine disbelief. James, are you seriously asking me to take you back? What about Vanessa? He had the decency to look ashamed. We're not engaged anymore. We're barely together. It's not working. She's not. She's not you. You're right, I said. She's not me. And do you know what the difference is? She's probably still hopping she can be enough for you, still twisting herself into knots trying to make you happy. I did that for 7 years and I will never do it again. I've changed, he said desperately. Seeing you succeed, seeing you thrive without me, it made me realize. It made you realize that you want what you can't have, I interrupted. Just like always. James, when I was your wife, doing everything for you, making myself smaller and smaller, I wasn't enough. I wasn't wife material, remember? But now that I'm successful and independent and clearly doing fine without you, suddenly I'm remarkable. Suddenly I'm worth pursuing. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is that you had 7 years with a woman who loved you completely, and you took that love and used it to diminish her. You made me believe that my dreams didn't matter, that my ambitions were selfish, that being your wife was the highest achievement I could hope for. And when I became exactly what you claimed to want, you decided I was boring. He opened his mouth, but I wasn't done. Do you know what the worst part was? It wasn't the cheating or even the divorce. It was that you made me doubt myself so fundamentally that when you left, I actually believed you were right. I believed I wasn't good enough, wasn't interesting enough, wasn't substantial enough. It took me months to realize that the problem was never me. It was always you. Emma, please. I'm not finished. You asked if there's a chance we could try again. The answer is no. Not just no, but absolutely not. Not in this lifetime or any other. Because I finally understand something crucial. I don't want a man who only values me when I'm succeeding despite him. I want a partner who celebrates my success, who encourages my growth, who loves me whether I'm on top of the world or struggling to find my way. You were never that person, and you never will be. The lights from the ballroom cast shadows across his face, and I could see that my words were landing. He looked smaller somehow, deflated. I was at my best for you, he said quietly. I gave you everything. No, James, you gave me your leftovers, your attention when you weren't busy with work, your affection when you were in the mood, your approval when I performed correctly. That's not everything. That's not even close. And this new life of yours, this career, these people, he gestured toward the ballroom. This is real. This makes you happy. Happier than I've been in 8 years, I said honestly. Happier than I ever was with you. And that's what you can't stand, isn't it? That I'm thriving without you, that I didn't fall apart, that I'm actually better off now than I was in our marriage. He didn't answer, but his expression told me I was right. I'm going to give you some advice, I said, my voice softening slightly. Not because I care about you anymore, but because maybe it'll help you not destroy the next woman who makes the mistake of loving you. Figure out what you actually want. Not what you think you should want, not what looks good on paper, but what genuinely makes you happy. And when you find it, appreciate it. Nurture it. Don't take it for granted and assume it'll always be there. I want you, he said. I know that now. I smiled sadly. No, you don't. You want the idea of me, the successful, confident version that you didn't create and can't control. But if we got back together, you'd start the same process all over again. Chipping away at my confidence, questioning my choices, making me feel like I need to choose between my success and your ego. I know this because it's what you do. It's who you are. People can change. Maybe, but I'm not interested in waiting around to see if you do. I've got my own life to live, my own dreams to chase, and none of them include you. I turned to walk back inside, but he caught my arm gently. Emma, wait, can I ask you one thing? I looked at his hand on my arm until he let go. What? Did you ever really love me, or was our whole marriage a lie? The question caught me off guard. I thought about it honestly before answering. I loved who I thought you were. I loved the man who seemed charming and successful and like he chose me out of everyone he could have had. But I don't think I ever really knew you, James, and I know you never really knew me. We were playing roles in each other's lives. You needed an audience and I needed to feel chosen. That's not love, that's just mutual need masquerading as partnership. And now, do you hate me? I considered that. Did I? I'd been so angry for so long. But standing here now, looking at this man who seemed so much smaller than the giant I'd built him up to be in my mind, I realized I didn't hate him at all. No, I said honestly. I don't hate you. I don't really feel anything for you if I'm being honest. You're just someone I used to know, someone who was part of my story but isn't part of my future, and I'm okay with that. I could see that my indifference hurt him more than hatred would have. He'd wanted some kind of emotional reaction, proof that he still mattered to me, but I didn't have it to give. I'm sorry, he said finally. For all of it, you deserved better. You're right, I did, and now I have better. I have myself fully and completely, and that's more than you ever gave me. I walked back into the ballroom, leaving him on the balcony. My heart was pounding, but I felt lighter. That was closure. Real, final closure. When I got back to the table, Priya immediately asked, "Are you okay? Do I need to fight him?" I laughed. I'm perfect, and no fighting necessary. That chapter is officially closed. 20 minutes later, they announced the winners of Campaign of the Year. When they called our agency's name for the fitness brand campaign, our entire table erupted in cheers. Margaret accepted the award, but in her speech, she specifically mentioned me and David as the strategic leads who'd made it possible. The audience applauded, and I stood up to acknowledge it, feeling proud and seen and valued. And from across the room, I could feel James watching. But I didn't look his way. I didn't need to see his reaction, his opinion of my success, his regret over losing me, his belated realization of my worth. None of it mattered anymore. The only person I needed approval from was myself. And looking at where I was, who I'd become, what I'd built from the ashes of my broken marriage, I could honestly say I was proud. So incredibly proud. After the gala, a group of us went out for celebratory drinks. We closed down a bar, laughing and telling stories and making plans for future campaigns. I got home after 2 in the morning, slightly tipsy and completely happy. I kicked off my heels, took off my jewelry except for my sapphire ring, and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back was radiant, confident, alive. She was everything James had said I wasn't, everything I'd forgotten I could be. You did it, I told my reflection. You really did it. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. I know you're probably asleep, but I just saw the industry newsletter about your award. I'm so proud of you I could burst. You're an absolute star, Emma Tors. Don't ever forget it. I smiled, typing back even though it was late. I won't, I promise. Because that was the thing. I'd spent 7 years forgetting who I was, letting someone else's opinion of me become my truth. But I'd spent the last 10 months remembering, reclaiming, rebuilding. And I'd built something beautiful, something strong, something entirely mine. The next morning, I woke up feeling different, lighter somehow. I realized it was because I'd finally, completely let go of James, of the marriage, of all the pain and anger and resentment I'd been carrying. That conversation on the balcony had been the release I didn't know I needed. I made myself coffee and sat by the window, watching the city wake up. And I thought about everything I'd learned over these 10 months. I'd learned that your worth isn't determined by whether someone chooses to stay or go. It's inherent, unchangeable, yours. I'd learned that making yourself small doesn't make someone love you more. It just makes you harder to see. I'd learned that the right person won't require you to dim your light. They'll celebrate your shine and add their own brightness to it. I'd learned that starting over isn't the same as going backward. Sometimes you have to return to who you were to become who you're meant to be. I'd learned that success isn't just about career achievements or money or recognition. It's about looking in the mirror and genuinely liking the person you see. And most importantly, I'd learned that the best revenge isn't elaborate or planned. It's simply living well. It's becoming so fully yourself that the person who tried to diminish you becomes irrelevant to your story. James had told me I wasn't wife material, and he was absolutely right. I wasn't material for being molded into someone's ideal. I wasn't material for shrinking and accommodating and disappearing. But I was material for so much more. I was material for leadership, for creativity, for success. I was material for genuine friendships and honest relationships and a life that felt authentic and full. I was material for my own dreams, my own story, my own happily ever after that didn't require another person to make it complete. That afternoon, I went for a walk in the park. It was a beautiful late November day, crisp and clear. And as I walked, I thought about the woman I'd been 10 months ago. Broken, lost, doubting everything about herself. If I could talk to her now, I'd tell her that this pain she's feeling, it's temporary. The humiliation, the anger, the sense of failure, it's all going to transform into fuel for the most incredible comeback. I'd tell her that the man who's telling her she's not enough is actually the one who's lacking. That his inability to see her value says everything about him and nothing about her. I'd tell her to hold on, because in 10 months she's going to be standing on a stage accepting an award for work she created. She's going to have friends who really see her, a career that fulfills her, and most importantly, a relationship with herself that's finally healthy and whole. I'd tell her that she's going to run into her ex-husband, and he's going to beg for another chance, and she's going to turn him down without a moment's hesitation. And it's going to feel powerful and right, and like the final piece of closure she needed. I'd tell her that the walk away he wanted to watch, it's going to be spectacular. She's going to walk away from him and straight into a life so much richer, fuller, and more authentic than anything they had together. And I'd tell her the most important thing, you are enough. You always were, you just needed to remember it. As I finished my walk and headed home, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Not for James leaving me exactly, but for the journey that his leaving had forced me to take. I'd discovered reserves of strength I didn't know I had. I'd remembered dreams I'd buried. I'd reconnected with the core of who I was beneath all the roles and expectations. Would I choose to go through it again? Absolutely not. It was painful and hard, and there were days I didn't think I'd survive it. But would I trade the woman I'd become for the woman I was? Not for anything in the world. That evening, I sat down and wrote in the journal Dr. Richardson had encouraged me to keep. I wrote about the gala, about the conversation with James, about the closure I'd finally found. And then I wrote something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I spent 7 years trying to be wife material, trying to fit a mold that was never designed for someone like me, someone with ambition and opinions and dreams of their own. I twisted and compressed and diminished myself trying to fit, and I still wasn't right. Because the mold was wrong, not me. I'm not wife material because I'm not material at all. I'm not something to be shaped by someone else's hands. I'm the artist and the sculpture. I'm the creator of my own design. And the life I'm building now, piece by piece, choice by choice, dream by dream, it's a masterpiece. Not because it's perfect, but because it's authentically, completely, unapologetically mine. I closed the journal and looked around my apartment. At the vision board on my wall where I'd already accomplished 3 of the goals I'd set. At the bookshelf full of marketing books and novels I read for pleasure. At the photos of me with Rachel, with my work friends, with my family, all of them showing a woman who looked present and happy and real. This was my life now, not the life I'd planned when I married James, not the life I'd imagined during those 7 years of trying to be the perfect wife. But a life that fit me perfectly because I designed it for myself. And if James wanted to watch me walk away, he was welcome to. Because the view from behind was pretty spectacular. A woman who knew her worth, owned her power, and refused to ever again make herself small for anyone. That was the revenge. That was the victory. That was the happy ending that didn't need a prince or a ring or someone else's validation. Just me. Fully myself, finally free, walking into a future that was mine to create. And let me tell you, it felt absolutely incredible. So to anyone out there who's been told they're not enough, who's been made to feel small, who's lost themselves trying to be what someone else wanted. Hear me when I say this. You are enough. You always were. The person who can't see your value isn't the measure of your worth. You are. Walk away. Rebuild. Remember who you were before someone tried to dim your light. And when you're standing in the fullness of who you really are, you'll realize that their rejection wasn't your loss. It was your liberation. And darling, that's when the real story begins.